All right, good evening. It is 5 o'clock and we will call our Grants Pass School District number 7 meeting to order. I'd like to thank all of those who are joining us and welcome you. We will begin tonight by doing our Pledge of Allegiance. And so if you'll all rise and join with me in reciting our pledge. Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we will proceed down our agenda this evening. So 2.0 communications. Do we have any written communications?
You do have one additional written communication. It is outside of your board binders and packet. This parent asked me to read their comments into the record when we get to consideration of the policy change on the val-sal status.
Okay. And then if we have anyone joining us tonight who'd like to communicate on a specific item in our agenda, we'd ask you to put that in the chat and we will be monitoring that and we'll entertain your comments at the appropriate time. So, our first item on our agenda this evening is 3.0, 3.1, approval of our May 25th board agenda for tonight and our approval of our May 11, 2021 board draft minutes. Last meeting, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Member Coleman.
Member Durbin.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other comments or concerns? Then can we have a roll call vote, please, Tanya?
Member De La Grange.
Yes.
Member Durbin.
Yes.
Member Brown Arrow.
Yes.
Board Chair Nelson.
Yes.
Member Coleman.
Aye.
Member Wilkins.
Yes.
Oh, we're missing
Member
Karen.
Richardson is absent.
He would have abstained anyway.
Did he say something to you earlier today? He didn't to me either. He was president of the House of Moving. I also just wanted to make mention to the public and to the board that we found a simple way. These meetings are recorded. They have a simple way to create a YouTube channel and make the board meetings available to the public for future dates. So just want to make the board aware of that.
Okay. We get enough views? Do we get paid?
Yeah, I don't know.
That sounds
Todd, you
right.
need to look into
That's the
that.
only way members get.
We can
You have to hit 10,000. Sorry.
Do we get the proceeds?
We're close.
District will watch it.
Yeah, we're close to 10,000, but just a little, not quite.
All right. 4.0, our reports, staff reports. We have our special education report card. So we'll turn the time over to Director White.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm happy to present the yearly special education report card. And as you can see and you saw in your packet, the data that we'll be looking at is from the last school year, 1920. And I'd just like to point out a couple of the highlights and areas that we're still working on from this year's special education report card. And I did that kind of on a separate attachment just so that we could have some context as far as improvement on some of the key data points, as well as some comparisons to state averages. So a few highlights. You will notice that the academic achievement scores on this report card are suppressed because state tests were not administered last year. But there's plenty of other data that's really important to take a look at. One is the percentage of our students who are enrolled in a regular general education class for 80% or more of their school day. That's an important measure because the IDEA really requires us to look to have as many students who have an IEP educated with their general ed peers, which means in the regular classroom with supports. And we've really been working on increasing the time that students are in general education. That also points to the number of students who are actually in a separate class. We've been working to decrease that number in other words, decrease the number of students that we have who are in a special ed classroom for the vast majority of their day. And so both of these measures point to the efforts of our teams to educate our kids in the least restrictive environment, which is also one of the pillars of special education law, that our kids have an opportunity to be with their peers as much of the school day as possible. So you'll notice on the additional little spreadsheet, the improvement that we've made over the last couple years. And I included the comparison to the state average so that you can see we still have a little bit of work to do in this area, but we're making improvement. I really also wanted to highlight, and I think it's on the next page, Todd, if you're the one doing the scrolling, we have improved in our graduation rate, and we've improved in our dropout rate, which means it's gone down. And so really exciting work of our high school teams to show a significant improvement in our graduation rate, and noticing that we're performing above the state average in terms of our students who are graduating in 4 years, who are enrolled in special education. And that is even with our efforts to have students in general education classes more. So that's exciting for us. And really, again, the work of the teams is really evident. You'll also see that we've, our dropout rate, we've decreased that so that we're, our dropout rate for students who have an IEP is below state average. So we're really proud of the way that our teams have continued to engage our students and keep them in school. And the other notes that I wrote on this are just for clarification. There's some parent survey results, and we haven't been chosen for that survey for 6 years. So I would say, I'm not really sure how important that data is that's on the special education report card. But I do want to point out that we scored a perfect 100% when it came to our students who had post-secondary goals on their IEP. And we met the 100% target for timelines met. We have a certain amount of time to evaluate students, and we met all of those perfectly. And then I think another important data point, and the last one that I'll point out in this time, really important, the disproportionality data. And what that means is that our students are not, our students who are part of a ethnic group or racial group have not received disciplinary consequences in a disproportionate rate compared to other students. And also our students identified for special education from those groups were not identified in a disproportionate manner to the general population. And so that is an important piece of data that the state keeps track of to ensure that we have fair and objective measures when we're applying discipline, and also when we're identifying students for special education. So those are a couple of the highlights and also things we're still working on from the special education report card, which is a required annual report. And I would be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Right.
Thank you, Linda. I just had a question on the bullet that says secondary transition, 100% of our students have post-secondary goals. I was just curious what those, could you describe what a post-secondary goal is exactly?
Yes, so as soon as our students reach age 16, then it becomes part of their individualized education plan, IEP, that they go through a set of sort of interest surveys, and they start to identify possible career paths. And so part of that is also that there are post-secondary goals. It could be employment, it could be community college. So those goals are part of the student's IEP, as well as the lessons that they go through regarding interest surveys and those kinds of things.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
And what is the percentage of special education students that we have?
Was that as a district, Debbie, that you were asking?
Yes.
So yeah, our number of kids last year was 791, and those are students who identified for special education. And we have been right around 13%. That's 13% of the total students in our district. And that is about right with the state average as well. And so that's important to keep track of as well. So we are, for one thing, it has to do with how we're funded, but also that we're not over-identifying or under-identifying students with disabilities. So we do look, keep an eye on that data. So it's about 13% of all of our students.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, well, Linda, thank you very much. We appreciate what you do for our special needs kids.
Thank you.
All right, 4.1.2, summer session. So Director Evans and Zatola.
Yeah, so I'm going to kick it off here, Susan, Director Zatola. Oh, maybe I'm not. We're just going to go in order of age, but so summer school, our super summer sessions. Wow, we did not anticipate the clamor for families wanting to sign up for things. When we decided to put out our registration page, we thought, oh, okay, well, 2 weeks is 2 weeks enough time to get all these sessions full. Like I hope that's enough time. We can't really give them longer because, you know, we got to get rosters going and let everybody, the teachers know what's happening. And then in 3 days, we had to pull it down, all of the registration, because we were over capacity. So that obviously was hard for some families who thought they had some time, but we were already full. So we have over 400 students, which is about 20% of our elementary enrollment, who are signed up to take at least one summer session this summer. We have 28 different camps that are being offered. Some are one and dones, just being offered 1 week. Some are offered multiple weeks. In addition to those 28 sessions that we are offering with our own GP staff and staff that we have contracted with, we also have 75 elementary students who are signed up for Summer Brain Gain, which is being hosted at Boys and Girls Club. We are partnering with the YMCA and are sponsoring not a number of kids, but 25, any District 7 parent who signs up for a week of summer camp at the YMCA can do that with 25% off of the registration. And then we're also partnering with Wildlife Images. They run an elementary week-long camp called Camp Eek. It's an excellent, excellent fun opportunity for kids. And right now we have purchased 25 free passes. So 25 kids could do that week-long camp, and I think we're going to be increasing that. So we're working through the process of identifying those kids who will get those tickets. We have how it's being run for elementary is that it is primarily being housed at Parkside Elementary. So huge shout out to Parkside, because teachers are giving up their rooms, and there's going to be a lot of activity all summer. It won't be a quiet summer like they're used to at schools. The camps are 5 days long, Monday through Friday. They're either Some camps are all day long and some are 9 to 12. And then we have a few afternoon camps that are 12:30 to 4. But we are offering childcare before and after. So if you need your child in a safe, friendly, great environment for the whole day because you're working, we can do that. As long as you're signed up for a camp, then you can also sign up for the childcare. So if you're in an afternoon camp, you could do the morning childcare. We're working on transportation for in the afternoon to get kids home if we need that. So that's still a work in progress. We'll be serving anywhere from about 175 on our lowest week to 325 kids on our biggest weeks this summer. And then I think in the packet you got an outline of what all those different sessions are. So lots of fun and creative things.
Susan, in the chat, somebody asked if there's a cost associated with that additional childcare being provided.
No cost for anything that we're providing at Parkside. I did want to give a shout out to, because I see her, well, not just because I see her on here, but anyway, regardless of whether she was here or not, but Jill Gove is our behavior intervention specialist at Parkside, and she is our elementary summer school coordinator. So she has put in a tremendous amount of work getting this up and organized and will help me in overseeing that. So just wanted to acknowledge all the work, great work she's done. Are there any questions about elementary?
Then I'll move on to middle school. At middle school, we had a very similar excitement about the different things that we are going to be able to offer this school year. It wasn't quite the clamoring that Susan just described for you all that happened at elementary. We have a number of things that are still open, but many of our sessions have closed at this time. So our middle school staff are, we put it out to our middle school staff to come up with ideas of ways to engage students and get them involved in being a part of the school community again. And our teachers came up with some really great camp ideas, from sign language to guitar to disc golf, athletic conditioning, and our most popular one, fish camp, learning how to fish. That session is full. That was the very first one full right out of the gate. In addition to the things that our middle school staff have designed and will be offering, we too are partnering with Josephine County Foundation. They'll be offering a number of camps during the July weeks. Those are still open. Summer Brain Gain will be offered by the Boys and Girls Club and will be on our campus at Grants Pass High School. So we're excited to be offering a variety of things. We also are continuing with our Avid Summer Bridge for math that we've done for the last couple of years. That is still being offered and is almost full, as well as our summer STEM classes where our high school CTE teachers introduce career and technical education programs of study to our middle school students. Those activities are in August. We also are working with our orchestra teachers. We'll be offering a 2-week orchestra camp for the various levels, elementary, middle, and high school. And depending on your skill and ability level, you're put into one of the sessions for orchestra. And then I'll go on to the high school. At high school, registration is very slow. And we're really struggling to get kids to be engaged in some of the things that we're offering at the high school level. Most all of what we're doing at the high school is for credit retrieval, trying to get students back on track for graduation. We are continuing to offer our online classes. We've done that for the last 8 or 9 years. Career Academy, personal training, and wellness are being offered again this summer. Right now, personal training has very few students registered, and so hoping to get some more so that we can actually offer that class this summer. Doing our Edgenuity Credit Retrieval Lab, that's something we've done for years and will continue to do during the entire summer with our staff listed there. Really working with our special ed and EL populations specifically. going to be working with their credit retrieval needs, but with our EL population, we'll also be focusing on language skill development and helping students earn a half of credit initial. For some in-person activities we have this summer, Intro to Child Development, Intro to Manufacturing, a PE general elective, and Science general credit. Those are for specific targeted students that failed an elective PE or science course with a 30% or better. These are short and compressed summer sessions, so trying to get them to a proficient level in order to earn the high school credit. We've also put out a survey to all of our students that we're partnering with Rowe Community College to offer college courses that could be used not only for college credit, but for high school credit. We've had very low turnout for that as well and have emailed multiple times to both parents and students. So we'll be working through that list and identifying students that might be able to take some courses at RCC. And then one more thing with high school, and I'm forgetting it. Lots happening on that front. Oh, Gladiola, sorry. Gladiola has been doing our summer session for a number of years. Gladiola will again be staffing summer school, and exciting this summer we'll also be offering GED prep sessions and some GED testing sessions. So looking forward to getting students on our campus in Alt-Ed as well. That is what's happening at middle school and high school, and I think Linda's going to share a little bit about what's happening in special ed.
Thanks. Yes, I just wanted to add our students who are in special education are welcome to access a lot of the other opportunities. But in addition, we're offering a special session specific to their IEP goals to help kind of boost their skills in math, reading, and writing. And those sessions will be offered the last 2 weeks in July and the first 2 weeks in August. So our students who have had a tough time making progress during the COVID pandemic have been invited to come back early to the school year and work with case managers to boost their skills. So we're really excited to be able to offer those sessions as well.
Thank you. Cassie, did you have a question?
I do. So with the elementary being such a successful program, is there opportunity to expand that?
If
To
you can get
more
some,
students?
if you can get some people to teach.
Staffing is the biggest thing, and so we left it really open. These unique creative sessions are because people have passion in these areas and they're willing to commit some of their time to do that. So staffing is, every district is kind of facing that with the capacity for summer offerings.
So Trish, with the high school, I think I know the answer, but the same classes that we offer every year and not having a larger assortment, is that because it has to be attached to a credit? I just expected more opportunity at the high school level than there is.
We threw out to our staff to put out ideas. Most of us think about high school as needing credit opportunity. I did remember one high school thing I forgot to talk about, and that's 8th to 9th grade transition. We'll be running a summer bridge program for identified at-risk youth in June and August to help get a group of students ready for the rigor of high school that have been identified at risk. Cassie, back to your question though, we have all of our classes are tied to some sort of credit recovery opportunity.
Is that a requirement of the funding? No. Okay.
It really goes, it's kind of the same question that you asked me, Cassie. It's just, I mean, we recruited as best we could with all of our staff, certified and classified, and then we offered every single thing that we could.
So had a couple of community members reach out to me and willing to donate time or things? And I know that not teaching, but as a enrichment type thing, is that something that is possible?
Um,
Is it okay if I make a comment? I had a meeting with ODE on this last Friday, and one of the things that was a big topic was the summer school and the summer opportunities that we're offering. And just one thing I want to make sure that you're all aware of is for the high school level students, when we submit our justification reports for how we're spending the money, only for the high school students, we have to show how many credits are being retrieved by those students. So there definitely is a link to credit retrieval and the high school kids when it comes to the summer learning opportunity. So I just wanted to make sure we didn't lose sight of that.
thank you, Sherry.
And I meant to add one thing too, just for anybody who, you know, all the hundreds of people who are joining the board meeting. We do, after we last night finished all of our class lists for elementary, we do have some random spots. And so we're just encouraging people to, like everybody who's emailed about a waiting list, we've been reaching back out to them and saying, okay, here's what I can offer. Here's where I could put you. And so just, there are some one-off spots scattered throughout the summer. So families can call the district office and we can try to get you placed.
What percentage of the elementary population are we serving, do you think?
20%.
Okay.
20% of our current elementary population is taking at least one camp or enrolled in at least one camp. Which I think is tremendous, especially for our first time ever, or certainly in a long, long time to do any kind of summer experience at elementary. We're super excited about it.
And it's about the same percent enrolled at middle school and high school.
I think that the middle school level has done a tremendous job. It looks like staff stepped up very well, just by looking at what was offered.
I'm blown away by the elementary ones. I snoozed, so I lose.
Is it in your packet, the list of all the classes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was overwhelming. There were so many choices. That's why I actually took too long to sign up, because I was like, okay.
Watch Jill and Susan
Yes.
and Tanya and Michelle try to go through the signups and try to put people first choice, second choice, third choice.
Through seventh choice.
Yes.
That was
They
impressive.
spent many hours this weekend, most of last Friday, and finished up yesterday, I think.
Jill and I left at 8:45 last night.
Yeah.
But Casey, there's some one-offs.
I know, now I know there's one-offs.
Go.
I've got an
You can
email.
still-
We need to take a
I
body,
still
we
go
need a
fishing.
rest, we need a restroom break. Well, thank you for all the work.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate it. We will move
And
on.
it's been a long time, but I still have the wolf nest my son made during summer school at Riverside. Back when you didn't have to do credit retrieval.
All right, well, 4.2 is our superintendent reports, and so we'll hear about our school opening update.
Yeah, so not a lot new on the school opening, other than we have every secondary student back every day, and a couple comments from administrator. It's starting to feel like normal school by seeing the same kids, seeing whole groups of kids every day. And so positive start to that. It's very helpful to learn from these last couple of weeks, depending on what we learn about next year's opening. And so there is a meeting, statewide meeting with superintendents and our teams on Tuesday of next week, where they're gonna unveil how they anticipate school to open next year. And then next in the packet, there's the communication from Colt Gill. I didn't get a response back from OSHA or the contact at Oregon Health Authority. I did speak with Michael Weber. So you can see from Colt Gill's response was he did not anticipate there being new executive orders issued, did not anticipate that. So that leaves it to then who has and what authority is out there to to put together mandates, or is it just recommendations? And so we're kind of waiting to hear that. This morning, meeting with state legislators talking about that very topic. Kim Wallen seemed to be pretty well versed on who would and wouldn't have authority. She says she anticipates if anything comes out that it's likely to be litigated. And so who knows right now, but we're crossing our fingers for some positive news on Tuesday. But as you can see from Colt Gill's response, there was a district that they withheld state school funding until that district got back into compliance, and then as well as facing OSHA fines. And then I further learned there was a superintendent who was reported to TSPC, and ultimately by defying executive orders, they were defying the law and therefore filed as an unethical educator, in spite of the fact the board directed the superintendent. That was not a defense in that case. So just putting it all out there of what we've learned thus far, and the precarious, unique situations that may come.
Uh-oh.
So,
Props.
when we decided to violate the federal directive on testing, are you an unethical educator?
Haven't been reported yet, and I don't believe so.
Just checking, because it sounds like it's the same fox to me.
Well, I asked ODE, and ODE gave us a clear response in regard to how that would be addressed, in spite of it being intentional.
If you need help getting contact at Oregon Health Authority, I think Gary has a little connection there, so he could help you out.
Maybe you could reach out as a board member, citizen.
It's my licensing board. Alex and my buddy.
Michael Weber said, he wouldn't really have any authority to shut schools down as a result of that, as a local health authority, and would not even want to go down that path.
Sounds like OSHA and everybody else would just do that first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
School funding and.
Ultimately.
Sounds like that's a good pathway for us to go down. Right, Gary?
I hear that's what Kirk's recommending.
We wait and see. And
Tuesday.
yeah, so.
Okay.
Well, I have been thinking about trying to get schools open.
Should I move?
Oh, boy.
No,
Oh, it's the poster.
I think I came up with a solution.
Oh, no.
Oh, my.
You gotta show
You
the
gotta
camera.
show
Gary.
the camera, show the
camera.
For the record, because this is a public meeting and the public is entitled to see or hear what you just shared with the board, there's a little, is that a magnetic sign?
Yes.
A magnetic sign that says,
Previous campaign.
vote from a prior campaign, vote Richardson for governor. So just so that's.
Dennis, right? It's Dennis.
This is middle
Change.
Very good, thank you. Go on to 4.3, our board reports and special concerns. Do we have anything from anyone?
I'll
Debbie
get
and
that
then
on.
Brian?
Okay.
No, Debbie, then Brian. Ladies
So-
first.
So I did go to the Valsal luncheon also and, started talking with the two orchestra valedictorians, and then they said, nope, one of you has to move. So I moved over to the two Lady Caver soccer players and, enjoyed both conversations very much. And then I thought, okay, I see Danny Cantola going around the room. I should probably try and do some of that too. And I talked with two young men who were, one's a baseball player, one's a football player, and talked about athletics somewhat, and asked them both who, neither one of them were full-time District 7 students. One transferred after, had been in Three Rivers through middle school, and one had, this was his third high school. And asked them, okay, what are the strengths and weaknesses of District 7? And I especially enjoyed one young man's, one who, this was his third high school, he said he was amazed at how kind the students were. That in the other high schools, he had to make a conscious effort to go up and be friendly and introduce himself and you know, it was work. And here at Grants Pass High School, people were kind to him, took an interest in him, and included him in the high school life. And then the one from Three Rivers said, you know, it's very different going from smaller communities of students. You know, he had a class size instead of 400 or 500 of 100. But he said the facilities here are so amazing. That was his comment there. So I thought it's always wonderful to see these outstanding people. Makes you feel good about the future.
Great, thank you. Brian?
Yeah, I had actually 3 different things. First one is, I know we've talked a lot, well, not a lot, but it's been brought up several times about the sound system in here. And I was just wondering if that's, if there's any movement on that, or if we're planning to handle that sooner or later, or just what the plan is.
Yeah, so we did an upgrade in here, and the feedback we're getting right now is these still are not picking up as well as we'd like them to. So Dr. Bloomquist has got some information on the different quality levels and ultimately the cost associated with those. So, so we are making progress on that, albeit slow. And so the other conversation is, it is better. Sam Stegmeyer says it is better. So that's some good feedback anyway. And now that, yeah, anyway, so the other piece though is, you know, Sherry and I and the rest of the directors are talking about physical space here at district office. We don't have a space yet for GP Flex administration and meeting space for them yet. We're looking at, you know, is the district office a place to do that? Great emails back and forth with Brian about the boardroom being more accessible in a larger space. And so is there a way to expand the district office here? And there's a couple of things. We've had James Lowe look at that. So if we're going to move forward on any construction, to be thoughtful before installing a bunch of new expensive stuff, if we're going to, I guess, expand the space down here. We do believe we can use the Recovery Act dollars as creating GP Flex creates more options, and ultimately adding more equity is the term that gets tied to that for all kids in our community, and that construction that directly impacts that is acceptable. So so Sherry's looking into that right now, and then but we have so many construction projects going on and work happening, so timing is a piece of that. So long answer to that question. We've got quotes and prices ready to go to upgrade. We just want to be thoughtful before what is this particular building going to look like. And so
Do you have any, can you give us like a range of what the cost is? Do you
Todd, do you have that information?
Yeah, the lowball numbers are about $5,000 to go from what we currently have up to about $15,000. So that's the numbers.
Okay. The plan to expand the district office is not going to go quickly. I mean, I see that as a year or two. So I don't know, we might want to consider implementing a plan for the sound system that could be moved or taken out and put back in. And because if it's going to be a couple of years, I think we should probably just go ahead and do it now.
Well, how bad is it since we upgraded? I mean, are we still getting feedback that they can't hear?
Yeah, I see Susan's head nodding there. Yeah,
okay.
There's your feedback.
It's still pretty hard. It's still pretty hard. Yeah, the microphones are way up in the ceiling, so you guys are a long ways away from them. So
Is that something we could do, Todd, is actually drop them so they're, you know, a couple feet above our heads?
There are mics that you can get to do that. They are about $1,000 each, but we can do that. Anything we do upgrading from here on out is a lowest estimate is about $5,000 to anywhere between 12 to 15.
And this meeting is not the place to solve the problem.
Correct.
Unfortunately, they're always trying to do that in engineering meetings, and it's like, nope, I'm not doing engineering.
We'll work on solving that.
I had a question about, do we have any update as far as the timeline when we're gonna get the results of the investigation for iResolve?
We anticipate, Bill gave us an estimated date of next Friday at the latest, that he should have the report to me, and then we're going to consult with legal counsel on next steps as to what, depending on what the report says. And so we'll review that with the board in executive session, probably on the 8th.
Okay, great.
So I'll have more information for the board then.
Sounds good. And then I just wanted to also bring up the topic of the electric buses. I learned that we were approved for a pretty sizable grant to go towards that initiative if we so chose. And it sounds like we decided to not do that. And so I guess my question is there was there was certainly interest from me, and there may or may not have been interest from other board members in considering that. And I don't know that it ever actually came to us for any kind of direction or decision. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there to everybody that we had been approved for, I think, 240,000 in total towards that.
Yeah, 190 from Pacific Power and 50 from the Volkswagen settlement that the state received.
Right. So it seems like I could see that maybe that should have, since there was some level of board interest, that may, or maybe that should have, or maybe the board should have at least been notified of that. So I just wanted to let everybody know and just kind of put that out there.
Okay.
As I recall at the last meeting, Sherry mentioned going over different options and that she could not pencil out it working for electric buses at that time. And so I certainly would want to pursue it when a person I trust has put a lot of effort into trying to make a pencil out and it didn't.
Gary?
I don't remember that, but at any rate, Debbie, you got to help me out. I think we should cover the history of buses, because I think that's prior to at least 4 of these board members. Do you remember? Can't remember how long ago it was the subject of buses came out and what quality level of buses we were going to do, because the state reimburses 70%.
70%.
And in fact, at some point, we were a little confused. We actually thought we got completely reimbursed for the buses. I don't know, Sherry, you might be able to help us out with that.
Yes, we do get reimbursed over 10 years. The buses are depreciated out over that period of time. And so we get each year's depreciation when we get our state school funding. And over the last couple of years, I've been moving that depreciation over into a bus replacement fund. And that's how we have been funding the debt service for the propane buses that we have been purchasing, because we have to have our entire fleet turned over by 2025. And so we've been working systematically to get all of our buses turned over. And on the electric bus, our former transportation supervisor had done a lot of work on that specifically, and we did get authorization from Pacific Power for the 190,000, and there was an additional 50,000 from the VW settlement, which we had prior to his work on the electric bus. We were going to put that money toward our propane buses to help us offset the cost of the propane buses. The total cost of an electric bus is $375,000 right now. I don't know if that's gone up or not. And so depending on if we use the VW money or not, we were about $160,000 short of having enough money to pull it all together to do the charging station, the additional electrical work, and then actually purchasing the bus. And then, as you guys may recall, there were some issues with that transportation supervisor, and he's no longer with us. And so I'm sure Kurt can share with you more about that if you're interested in what happened in that situation. And so there were a lot of things going on at that time when we were looking at the electric bus option, and knowing that we had to turn over our entire fleet. Just as a district office team, we thought that that was a lot of money to invest just in one bus when we had so many buses that we need to turn over in order to comply with the EPA guidelines by 2025.
So
There you go. That's a nutshell.
So Sherry, I was kind of looking for the history part, the like 4 or 5 years ago, before we were actually saving the money to pay for the buses, some kind of way we got into deficit, or meaning
Yes.
we needed to buy buses, but we hadn't kept the money that we were getting to pay for the buses. And we had a really hefty discussion at the board level. And in particular, it came up that it didn't much matter whether you bought the cheapest bus or the bus that had more options. They cost about the same because of the way the state reimbursement worked. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, that's correct. It's just an upfront cost that we have to bear. And then over the 10-year period, we get that money back. But yeah, you're right. And many years ago, we weren't putting the money into the bus replacement fund. And so that money was just going straight into the general fund, and we weren't having that balance available that we could use to purchase new buses when we needed to do that. And so, over the last couple of years, I created that fund and am now moving that money over into that bus replacement fund. So that gives us kind of a fighting fund for buses.
So I guess as far as the history part goes, I wanted the newer board members to kind of know that we sort of tripped up in the past by not taking money for buses and keeping it for buses. But we're doing that now. But after I leave, I didn't want you guys to forget it. Institutional memory. But the way the formula works, we can actually, like the buses that have to go to Klamath Falls and things like that, they have buses now that like put chains on the tires without somebody climbing out there and doing it. And we're always trying to be fiscally responsible, but at the same time, that kind of an option is pretty good for those buses that we have that do that kind of duty. And it really doesn't hardly cost us because of the way the state reimburses the district for the buses. So that's just something else to keep in mind as we do budgeting and that kind of thing. And my recollection was at that time, we sort of said we should be buying the higher quality, more full featured buses, but I don't know how that worked out in practice.
Kurt, do you know how much one of the propane buses costs?
Sherry didn't know that information.
The big buses are about 160,000.
The propane buses?
Yes,
So, but it would also cost us 160,000 for the electric bus after the grants?
for one bus, yes.
So they cost essentially the same?
No.
Well, you have to have the infrastructure costs too, and so, you know, we would have to install, which is not a huge expense. It's about 30 grand
So
estimate
I
to
think
do the electrical work to install the station.
Yeah, seeking clarification, I think what Brian's asking, so an electric bus at that time ran about 375,000, you said, at that time, and now we don't know the current cost of those. And so we would be able to depreciate that cost over 10 years. I don't know exactly how that translates in terms of being cost effective. Can you speak to that, Sherry?
Well, that's true. A propane bus is about 160,000 and the electric bus is 375,000. And so either way, you're going to be able to depreciate the bus over the 10-year period. And so it's just making the decision of, do you want to put out the additional, you know, pay twice as much for a bus or not? And that's really all it comes down to, is what the preference is for how much you want to spend for a school bus.
So it's spending, we incur the cost on the front end and we don't build up the replacement cost of that, but over 10 years.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
I think my point is that even though the electric bus costs way more, we were going to get $240,000 to bring that cost down. So the cost was the same cost as a propane bus. And then with the electric bus, you also have the fuel costs that are less than half. And you also have the maintenance costs that are less than half. And then you also have the non-monetary benefits of no noise pollution, no air pollution, easier to communicate in the cabin of the bus. So there's other benefits too besides the cost. But even when you're just looking at it from a cost standpoint, it sounds like it still would have worked out well.
Is it still a viable option for the grants?
Sherry, do you know if it's still a viable option to pursue any grants that are available?
It possibly is. I would just need to reach out to Pacific Power on that.
Sherry, how many buses do we need to replace our fleet by 2025?
I don't know that off the top of my head, Dr. Nelson, but I can find that out for you. I just don't remember.
We have it on a schedule.
We're on track.
Do we know about how many buses we have? I mean, how many buses does the district own currently?
The district owns close to 60 buses.
Good.
And I know the way we have it scheduled out that we are on track to have all of the buses replaced right at the 2025 year mark when we have to have them replaced. I just don't know off the top of my head how many we are at this point in time.
I think originally we were talking about 6 to 8 buses per year.
Yep.
That rings a bell for me.
Yep. And it depends on, I mean, we have a mix of the big buses and the small buses, and so it just depends on which ones are coming up for the cycle of replacement.
So let me see if I understand this correctly. So the first bus would have been about the same amount for one bus as electric or propane. But we really needed closer to 50 buses. And it's, you know, 48,000 that we have to pay for a bus if it's propane, and 112,500 if it's electric. That's our cost after the 70% refund. So that's a significant difference to me.
We don't have all the numbers as far as, you know, what the fuel savings would be, what the maintenance savings would be. We just don't have all the information.
I think it's, at this point, it's, if the interest is there, worthwhile to see if the grant's even an option any longer. And if it is an option, then we can pencil out some of that harder math to see if one of the buses that we want to purchase, if that would make sense, considering fuel and maintenance savings, mean, I think obviously the first priority is making sure we meet the 2025 mandate. If there's a way to get the math to work where we can experiment with a electric bus, if the grants are still out there, then, I mean, I'm always for trying to see what we can do to help with the environment, but it sounds like we have some information to find out before the discussion really can move forward on what's relevant today.
We'll work on penciling things out and find out what resources are available to, if there's an interest by the board, to know more about electric buses and how the district goes about paying for things and what's reimbursable and ultimately what the ultimate cost in the district is in the long term.
But there's no grant left, there's no free money, yeah, and that changes this.
Right, yeah.
Absolutely. Let's explore the free money option.
But the one bus as a test, because I'm never sure I really believe the savings the people trying to sell you the bus are telling you, but actually having one bus and being able to test if it delivers the benefits you want is a good thing. It's a test.
Okay. All right. Any other special concerns or reports?
I also was able to go to the valedictorian luncheon and found it very inspirational. And I also think our scholarship awards that took place in the last several weeks, very, very impressive. I don't know the exact number of dollars, but there was a lot of money changed hands and a lot of, I thought there was going to maybe be a newspaper listing of all the winners, but I keep looking, I don't see anything. But especially these days and during the pandemic, the newspaper will step in and help, you know, advertise. It's a real outstanding program, Josephine County Educational Fund, that we work hand in hand with. And there's a lot more giving than I even thought once I heard some of the other things and saw some of the other exhibits. So it's very enlightening that way and something we can really be supportive of. And I know the school board did, 3 scholarships as it turned out, which was very appropriate. And all of those students today, if you just sit in that room, it was in the cafeteria, but you sit in that room or wherever you are with them, and it's just inspirational that they are the future. And they all have plans. They've made plans. I know some things will change as they get older, and they'll change schools, but they really think things out. They really figure things out, and it's a good example, I think, for younger students that maybe aren't, like when they start orchestra in the 4th grade. I mean, are you thinking much about what you're going to do when you graduate? Probably not. But as you go on up, I talked to a couple of the orchestra students who are outstanding, the leaders, and it is motivational to see how others have participated in music in Grand Traverse High School and the other schools prior to it, from 4th grade on up. And so it also reminds me, and I like to say it when I get a chance, I don't have proof, but I think music students have a better opportunity to do maybe some academic work than they would if they weren't in music. Now, I could get an argument, I'm sure, but I see a connection, a tie-in over the years, and so I have to bring it up every year as long as I believe in it. So that was very exciting, I thought. And so the only other thing I want to share today was, as Brian knows, the city council is going to look into a potential new swimming pool for Grants Pass. And on June 10th, there'll be a kickoff meeting of the city's Park Advisory Committee. And added to that Park Advisory Committee of 7, it's been 7 from the beginning, 5 new members who exclusively will discuss swimming pool locations, possibilities, facilities, whether to keep it where it is now. I'm not sure what the choices really will be on that, but there are other locations mentioned around our district like Riverside School and things like that, Reinhardt Park, that we all may have some opinions on as to where a city, if we had one city, municipal swimming pool, should it be open or covered? Should it be downtown? Should it be where it is right now, which is on our, it's not on, what is it? It's on our, not on our property. It's on city property. It's next to the school. So we use it for competition. We probably pay something for that. And we've had a lot of interest. And I know Brian had brought it up when they last started talking about whether to repair for, it was getting up to $2-3 million, this present facility. Brian kind of brought it up. Maybe it's time for a new replacement. So a number of people are buying into this on a city level, and we're going to be right in the middle of it because that's where the pool is right now. So if you have any opinions on a swimming pool, one way or another, that would be used as a city swimming pool, but might have school uses like this one does, or any way you want to be involved, it's a major decision. There's a lot of money involved. There'd probably be a huge amount of grant money that, in order to afford it. Would you say?
So there's discussion that it won't be in the same location?
June 10th, they will meet in City Hall that will throw out ideas, these 5 new members, one of whom is your wife. These are people who know something about swimming or pools already. And the committee, park committee selected these 5 out of a list of 14 that want to be. And so these are special people. Some people didn't get selected. So they're very serious. The city's very serious about that. If Brian can speak to the city.
Very serious.
So we either get a new pool or more parking. That's all about.
Don, there was some comments in the chat. Did any of them have to do with items that we have discussed or on the agenda that we need to address?
No, I went ahead and addressed them directly to them. So they're not on agenda items for tonight.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, we'll move on with our agenda to 5.0 or action items. 5.1, approval and first and final reading of policies and ARs. 5.1.1, IKC valedictorian and salutatorian status.
Yeah, so there's 2 communications in your packet, one that I believe originally needed to be done, and then an additional one that was submitted regarding our ValSal policy. And I know the board revisited this a number of years ago when we changed our weighting system. We weighted AP courses now as part of the GPA. Well, we've got a pretty amazing situation where we've got a couple of kids who have transferred in with already substantial AP credit. And so one example is a student who has 13 AP classes on their transcript, and however, they got 5 Bs in that regard. Regardless of the 5 Bs, because of the weighting, they are the #1 ranked student in this class of 2021, and is not being recognized as a valedictorian. So with strong recommendation from high school administration, Director Evans and myself, a slight change to this policy to recognize those students who go way above and beyond to challenge themselves and ultimately accomplish #1 status in the district as an achieving student as measured by GPA. To add that for board consideration to be considered a valedictorian. It's proposed that this is the first and final reading to recognize students at this time. So if you want to read the student's communication, I did tell the parent I would read her comments into the record. So let me do that right now. From Tessa Park, who's the parent of Casey Park, for which you also have that communication. I would like to communicate my support of amending ValSal policy. I fully understand that making policy does not often end with the first reading and second draft. While the current policy reflects considerable effort to define the parameters being considered for a valedictorian or salutatorian, it is evident that an amendment is needed. It's difficult to define or create a policy that covers every scenario, especially when there are unusual circumstances, such as the case with Casey Park and other future students who will find themselves in a similar situation. As the #1 ranked student with the highest weighted GPA, who has taken 3 times as many AP courses than any other student, Casey is the victim of a policy that excludes her and denies her of this top honor in spite of her achievements. From 6th grade, Casey has pushed herself academically, taking advanced classes with the goal of being a top student. Instead of celebrating her achievements and receiving the earned recognition, she's confused as to why she is being excluded. For Casey's sake and other future students, I would encourage the board to avoid the urge to view this as an assault on the policy itself, but recognize that great policy is made in such ways a process of revision as new evidence and circumstances arise. And so while it would be easy to just brush aside the situation or fall back on the current policy, I ask for Casey's sake and other future students like her to adopt the proposed amendment effective immediately. Respectfully, Teresa Park. So wanted to make sure Teresa's comments got in there. And Todd, do we have anybody in the audience who wishes to speak to this?
Yes, Casey's actually here tonight. And Casey, if you'd like to speak, you may have 3 minutes before the board, and I'll let you know in about 2 minutes and 30 seconds when your time is close.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Casey, and I'm a senior at Grants Pass High School. It is hard to believe that graduation day is almost here next Friday. And after taking a total of 13 AP classes throughout high school and earning the highest weighted GPA out of anybody in my graduating class, I can safely say that I've pushed myself to the limits and have had the opportunity to grow and prepare myself for college. However, to my disappointment and surprise, I learned that although I have a class rank of 1, I will not be awarded with the valedictorian. I am sure you can all imagine how much this means to me, as I've worked so hard for this my entire high school career. After processing and discussing this situation with family and friends, I am left to wonder what lesson it is I can possibly take from this. Should I have eased the rigor of my course load, or should I have taken only 4 AP classes and breezily earned all A's? I know you are all extremely busy with end of the year items and new budgeting for next school year and COVID reopenings, and the list goes on, but it would really mean a lot to me if you were to enact the amendment to the policy immediately. And thank you for taking the time to listen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Casey. All right, well, we have a motion on the table, and we have a motion. No, I'm sorry, we have this proposal for the amendment. So we'd like to have a motion to approve, that we can have a discussion on it.
I'll certainly make a motion in light of encouraging our students to reach greater heights than ever before and raising our top GPA from 4 to whatever, sky's the limit. If we have this kind of achievement, information about a student, and time is of the essence, I would myself like to see it happen. I'd be in favor of it. That's my motion.
I'm ready to grant a second. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Oh, so much discussion.
Gary?
So you probably missed the change of this policy from what it used to be. Is that correct?
Yeah, this was not the policy in place when I went through school.
Right. So, we had ample discussion that as soon as we created weighted grades, there became this contest to see who could have the highest GPA. And it depends on the denominator as much as it does the grades you get in the class. So I don't particularly know how this student played the game, and also rules have been in effect the entire time. So if you show up again and say, I've been some kind of way disrespected, is the rules were in place. Opportunity to know what it takes to be a valedictorian. And anytime you have weighted grades, you're going to have this gaming of the system. And so we chose the policy the way it was, so that there are clear rules and they're fairly simple. So just, you know, there's a bunch of history behind this policy, and to have it show up and be changed in a single meeting is not the proper way to do policy. I can already tell just by the way the change was inserted that there's going to be additional ways to game the system that are going to cause issues in the future. We already had one of these 2 years ago, but it was related to the salutatorian. And they had some higher GPA, but they had more than 1 or something, and our policy says it had simple B. So, you know, likelihood this student, I'm not sure, they may be a salutatorian. Are they a salutatorian under
No.
our policy?
No.
But yeah, so neither, right?
Correct.
Yeah, which is as it should be with the way the policy is written. If the board just feels its need to try and change the rules after the fact, I would submit, rather than changing policy, that the board just give a dispensation to this student in this particular case, and allow the policy to continue on. So we had all sorts of fun doing, I mean, the way to get the way to be the #1 student is to take the fewest number of classes total and just take each class. So the fact that they have an extremely high number, then I have to know what the other classes and that kind of thing. And they had 6 B's, so 5 B's. So that just means that class wasn't an AP class. They got a 4 for that class, which is the same thing as an A. So there's really no reason to change this policy. I really recommend it. At one point, it was suggested by a board member that we should have more valedictorians. Apparently, we have a record number this year.
I don't know the history, but it is a very large number, potentially a record number.
The intent
for as many as possible.
The intent at the time was actually to try and reduce the number of valedictorians. We were hitting numbers so high that the paper was actually giving us flack for the number of valedictorian students. At that time, there were actually high schools in the northern part of the state that would have like 25% of their graduating class with valedictorians. In our discussions, it was noted that what is the Eastern Oregon State University, if you're a valedictorian, you get free tuition. So some sarcastic board members suggested that we graduate all our students as valedictorians so they have free tuition in Eastern Oregon. Is that you?
Absolutely, that was.
Awesome.
I wasn't here, but I'm completely confident.
So, valedictorian, salutatorian are meant to
originally honor the highest to two academic students of a class. Some kind of way in our society, we sort of try to make it so it's okay to have more. There's really only one, but in any event, that's my discussion so far.
Ryan, do you have a comment? It was more of a question. Do we have the ability as a board to do like a one-off, as Harry suggested?
Yes, usually the board has a discretion to do a one and done. We've had to do it in the past sometimes to meet legal requirements, but the board does have the authority to do that.
And does staff think that this amendment will lead to further complications in the future, or?
No, I can pretty much tell you that. They just wrote a sentence to try and get this student in without considering the future ramifications.
I feel completely behind in all of the history and the discussions of the benefits or not. I mean, when I read this particular student situation, I definitely feel for Casey. It has nothing to do with the fact that her name is Casey, spelled exactly the same way. And also has nothing to do with the fact that I was valedictorian in my Grants Pass High School graduating class. But I remember being a senior and taking AP classes and being valedictorian with other kids who also had the 4.0 grade, didn't have the weighted thing happen yet. But the feeling of they got 4 point with no AP classes versus I busted my butt in these AP classes to push myself, and that felt like there was no additional recognition or emphasis, or I do worry about the complacency part of it, where if I just want to get the valedictorian stamp, I have to take 4 AP classes and then can kind of coast my rest of the way through. So I definitely understand that argument. I felt that argument back in the day, but I definitely do not pretend to understand all of the tentacles that can come from something like this, because I think there's something to be said of this was the rule that's been in place, and it hasn't changed since 2017 when we amended it. So you kind of understand the operating rules when you come into it. But I would hesitate to amend a policy. I'd be more in favor of approving a one-off, because I do want to recognize the effort that Casey put in, and taking all those AP classes is no joke. That's a serious achievement. So I'd be leaning towards that way before hearing anybody else's input on the matter.
If I could speak for a moment.
Sure.
And I think Ryan is on the line as well. So what we have always heard from the board is wanting to encourage as many students as possible to push themselves and to challenge themselves and take as many AP courses while they're at Grants Pass High School. Back in 2017, when we rewrote the policy to include the weighted grades, we were looking at the various possibilities of, and at the time, what we were told by the board as well is it wasn't about just identifying one valedictorian and one salutatorian. It was about encouraging students to take a variety of AP classes. When we had this situation, and there's some other nuances to this year that Ryan can explain a little bit better, but I want him to be able to speak to those nuances and another student situation as well. Ryan, can you weigh in on that for us?
Sure. One thing that's influenced the number of valedictorians we had this year is our COVID schedule. And what occurred is, as you might be aware, is that students only were taking 4 courses at a time rather than the traditional 7. And the policy you're looking at in front of you actually speaks to the minimum number of courses a student can take. And so if we didn't amend that policy, we wouldn't have any valedictorians this year because it says they all have to take a full load of 7. And obviously we didn't take 7. So we had to make amendments to that. But part of what influenced the number of valedictorians this year is that we had some seniors who could not take their full allotment of 4 AP courses before vals and sals are supposed to be determined, which is at the end of semester 1 of their senior year. And that's because we didn't offer those courses until second semester of their senior year. And so we had a few seniors that delayed, not because they chose to, because they had to delay enrollment in those AP courses because that's when they were offered. So therefore, weighted GPAs were lower when we calculated those at the end of quarter 3, when they were enrolled in a minimum of 4 AP courses during their time at Grants Pass High School, or in their high school career, I should say. So what we saw was the lowest weighted GPA of a valedictorian was lower than usual this year because of that incident that happened because of COVID. So that's kind of where we're at. We do have one other student that is not here tonight that I feel like if we're going to look at Casey, we need to look at another one. And they also have a higher weighted GPA than our lowest valedictorian. So I just want to be careful that if we do for one, we should do for both.
I mean, I think the one-off nature of COVID and the wrinkle that it's presenting this year, I get nervous about a first and final changing of policy. I'd rather recognize the kids that the administrators have direct, input on who they think deserves the honor. And if this is worth revisiting, walking through some of the ramifications that Gary's worried about. The only reason why I'm okay and open to doing these one-offs for these 2 individuals is because graduation's happening. And if they deserve it, they deserve it. And I think everybody can understand that COVID has thrown a wrench into everybody's plans this year. And if this needs to be looked at for future years, then we put the time in to look at the policy and do it right for going forward. But I want to hold the kids harmless for something that was completely out of their control. If they push themselves and they deserve to be on that list, then Trish and Ryan's input there is invaluable. So I would agree with that, Casey Wilson.
Yeah, I would be willing to withdraw my second because I didn't know that an exception was a possibility. So if Cliff wanted to do that, I would withdraw mine.
So either I have to follow board policy directly, or the board has to amend a policy, or the board needs to say, we need to go another path.
Well, my motion is directed at excellence. And certainly could include the pandemic condition. I'm not looking for excuses. I'm just saying, due to what I heard, and I've observed the GPAs of all 14, whatever it is, valedictorians, and they are winners. They're all winners. And they carry this forward into life out of Grants Pass. And I want to help them go farther, as far as they'll go. And if it takes one exception, I'm fine with it, and then go to the policy later. We did a policy recently that was an overnight policy, and we seem to get that one through, but I'm not too worried about it. I think we're going to do the right thing, whether we do it tonight or next year. We're going to continue to up our graduation rates, our rates for excellence. I guess I don't like that word. With the attitude that we have in our district, starting from the very beginning, our board, superintendent, and all the staff. I think we all want excellence, so whatever we can do. We're not trying to cheat or anything. That seems to be the warning. Well, you don't want to cheat. I don't feel that's the situation for cheating. These are exceptional, extraordinary circumstances. And all too often I see that people lose something that they probably really deserve because of tradition or regulation. And in this case, I'm excited about their graduation coming up the 4th. We're going to go out there and wish them well. And we want to do everything we can to encourage them. And so a one-shot deal is fine, probably should be for both cases.
So I think what I heard was removal of the motion.
Yes.
The motion to direct Principal Thompson to select make an exception for the 2 students. Is that correct?
That's it.
Okay. Do we have a second on that?
Yep.
Brian Grange has a second. Thank you. Any further discussion?
I just want to say that, you know, times change, cultures change, and I don't think we need to limit FALs to 1 and 2 students. I think we can go with, I was in favor of the current policy, and I'm in favor of exceptions under extraordinary circumstances.
All right. Tommy, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Member Delagrange,
Yes.
Member Durbin. Yes. Member Brownell.
Yes.
Board Chair Nelson.
Yes.
Member Coleman.
Yes.
Member Wilkins.
Yes.
Member Richardson.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. The motion carries.
Congratulations, Casey.
Free tuition in Eastern Oregon.
Is this a policy that we want to revisit in the future, or are we good?
I will meet with Principal Thompson and Director Evans to further this conversation, to try to look at all the nuances of what this policy may or may not do in the future. We're adding more AP courses to the schedule. How does that going to play out and impact? And we want more kids to take those, and that means there's going to be more Bs.
Just ask him what his exceptions are so you can just answer them.
Yeah, we're going to have a committee of 4, Principal Thompson, Director Evans, myself, and Member Richards.
Perfect.
Well, I think that really it comes down to what do we want from a philosophical standpoint? Are we trying to recognize as many students as we can, or are we simply trying to have 2 individuals that are recognized? And I think that's an attitude and a philosophy that the board can help direct more than anything. And I agree with Libby. I think if there's a very high bar that's set, anybody who can hit that bar, I think we need to recognize them. So I am not just for the top 2 individuals. So I think if we want to revisit the policy and continue in a conversation for that type of direction with Principal Thompson's input, then we can have further discussion where that would be fine.
Principal Thompson, can I ask if you're allowed to share the other individual's names? Since Casey got recognition, I'd like to also recognize the other individual if possible.
Yes, I heard part of what you said. You asked something about recognizing the other person that qualified. Is that right?
Yeah, just to, because I know Casey Park is one of them, obviously, but just to know the other individual as well.
Yes, the other student is Jody Chen.
Thank you.
Yes. Mhm.
And as a point of information, I'd also like a refresher on how students are ranked.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. 6.0, future meeting dates and suggested agenda items. We have our 2 board meetings. First is June 8th and the second is June 22nd. And is there anything else as far as future agenda items we need to discuss?
I think each person who graduated from Grants Pass High School on the board should have their class ranked. That future board meeting, we can discuss that.
Well, it's after the 30th, I might not be here, so.
I object.
Right.
Is that a motion?
So the deadline, yes, I can talk to the scholarship or about the scholarship. The deadline for the scholarship is June 1st, so we will likely hear after June 1st. Because I think we're still accepting applications to that point, but our application has been submitted and we are waiting to hear. So,
Are we, speaking of future agenda items, don't we need to be moving forward with goals and?
yeah, so I was gonna bring that up, but I'll let Kurt talk about that.
Yeah, so the end of the year, wrapping up COVID, getting secondary back in, have not had an opportunity to bring my team together to review, do a lot of review, but we'll have something for the board at the next meeting. Some information there, followed up in June with the self-reflection on the superintendent, so we can figure out that side of the house as we're trying to align those things. Navigate the process. So,
And are we also negotiating your contract?
yeah, that will be, so that might be a good thing for Scott to process to do that. I think it was suggested in speaking with Scott to have a subcommittee of 3 board members to sit down and look at information. I have information to share, comparisons around the districts of like size as well. So
Time just flies by, so.
it's good. Graduation and school's out the following week.
And then it's all coming.
Summer school.
Then it's all coming.
Summer school.
All right, well, we will adjourn our regular session. Thank you very much for your attendance, and we will open executive session in 5 minutes.
Chris was just making comments about the audio. They could hear Cliff really well, but they couldn't hear me well.
Yeah,
So it
it's
might be
location of
positioning
mics.
Here, Gary.